Hello, everyone. I'm going to be going over articles Society and Sex Roles and Body Rituals among the Nacirema. Um, I chose both of these articles for a few reasons, mainly because Society and Sex Roles is something that's been kind of heavy in my life recently. My younger sister is eventually going to be studying that for university, and because body rituals in particular was something that seemed kind of interesting to me. So, starting off with the first article, according to the author, what is the relationship between access to subsistence and the status of men and women? Basically, the central claim of the article is that men tend to have more power in certain societies because they bring in and have access to the resource of meat through hunting. The article argues that it's not possible to have a fully equal society because most hunter-gatherer groups and early societies delegate men to hunt, and because the men hunt, they have control and access over a vital resource that basically gives them a position of power in certain societies. I don't personally know if I agree with this. It cited a few examples in the article and gave some reasons for why women specifically could not hunt. It said that it was impossible to gather and hunt at the same time, and that sometimes children would have to be carried by the mother and other such kind of like things that would conflict with women in a society hunting. Uh, it also mentioned potentially like the downside to trying to split the hunting between men and women by like having a wet nurse take care of the kids while the mother was out hunting or things like that. But it gave some kind of thin rebuttals, in my opinion, by just saying that, oh, there wouldn't be enough people in the area to, have a wet nurse for every kid that's born in a small society, which I don't think is necessarily true. There could definitely be a culture where it's highly encouraged for a few people to have a kid at the same time in order to have multiple wet nurses change out in order so that women can go on a hunt. Um, so for that reason, the second question, I think it is possible for there to be a complete gender equality in society. And honestly, all that prevents it, in my opinion, is the years and years of kind of pressure that we have from our own society of just patriarchy and the idea that there's a difference in capability between men and women. So if we're able to do away with that slowly and over time, I think it's possible. We just have to make an active attempt to make a more equal society in order for it to come about. Okay, on to the second article, body rituals among the Nacirema. So the Nacirema are us, the Americans. Uh, Initially, when reading the article for the first time, I was kind of horrified. I at first didn't realize a lot of the stuff the article was hinting at. It like seemed kind of esoteric, mentioned several tools and instruments and rituals that seemed very foreign and scary and just kind of barbaric. But the more I got further into the article, I realized it was likely like a parody article. While reading it, I realized, hey, some of these practices sound very similar to very common daily occurrences, especially when it got into stuff about body image and I think I mentioned breast size a lot and just images like dieting and bulking. It mentioned a lot of things related to that, and since I know that that's a very big part of American culture, I kind of got it at that point. I figured, and then basically looking back at the rest of the article, it made a lot of sense when it was like describing very esoteric things that all of this was just kind of a way of describing common occurrences for American society in a way that other societies are typically described to us to try and shift our perspective a little bit. Um, In what ways can we see how the author's own feeling and biases impact the relating of cultural information and our own understanding of society? How do we separate ourselves from our own impressions, feelings, and cultural biases in order to better understand what cultural behaviors exist and persist? I think the main way we can tell the biases are just kind of the way it's related to us. Um, it was in the article, it used uh, words of magic and ritual and things and words of that nature. Technically, I think that is true, and those are accurate descriptors of a lot of the things we do in our culture, but perhaps using more, not necessarily neutral terms, but terms that originate from a given culture could be a way to stop biases from accruing in a given work. Maybe using throughout a certain article the native word for a practice or something would be helpful in trying to spot biases by an author. But uh, one way we could separate our own impressions, feelings, and cultural biases would be to try and explain things as a native would, or take the. It's a really difficult question, honestly, and I can't think of much else besides what I've already said, but I hope I learned some more ways that we can do this. Thank you.